What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. My name is Miko, joined once again by my guy Morgan Cannon, and we are here on a wonderful Monday to talk some more Detroit Lions football because, again, this is the place you have to come if you're looking for news, updates, analysis, anything that's Detroit Lions related. This has got to be your go-to place to go. Morgan, the Lions are clearly in offseason mode. Last week, we did a lot of talking about coaching, and the Lions are still kind of in that mode of trying to fill out the roster or fill out their coaching staff, should I say. They made the news last week about them hiring Kelvin Shepard as their defensive coordinator. News broke later that week that they hired Johnny Morton to be their offensive coordinator. And there's still, like I said, there's still some positions on the staff that need to kind of get filled out. You have a couple skill positions in terms of wide receivers coach, a tight ends coach, and a couple other like assistant position coaches. So the Lions have that stuff that they have to focus on. But unfortunately, we're going to have to put all of that on pause because some of the biggest news to happen in the NFL broke today in terms of Myles Garrett, the Cleveland Browns star defensive end, reigning defensive player of the year, has made the team aware that he is requesting a trade. Now, what does that have to possibly do with the Lions when he clearly plays for the Cleveland Browns? Well, I don't think it's any secret, Morgan. The Lions have a huge need at defensive end. And so the minute a name like Myles Garrett becomes available, everybody and their mom is going to hit Twitter, hit every Reddit comment post or whatever the case may be, and talk about how desperately the Lions need Myles Garrett, right?
No doubt, man. And also, it's funny. I've done the same thing a couple times. I call John Morton Johnny Morton, and that just might have to be what we call him, man. Because me and Miko are about the same age. So if y'all know Johnny Morton, that means you're a little bit old, or you just know old ball, and you know old ball too. So
I'm gonna call him Johnny Morton until he gets in front of the media and says I prefer to be called John, and then I'll be respectful and I'll call him John. But until then, it's Johnny Morton for me.
I love it, man. I love it because both of them love both Johnny Mortons. Then, but yeah, I knew as soon as this happened, man. What happens is, especially with a player of the caliber like Myles Garrett, Garrett's like a guaranteed Hall of Famer, yearly, going to be up for Defensive Player of the Year on an annual basis when he's healthy. Just a difference maker in every facet of the game. Only has to come off the field when he needs, a moment to breathe. That kind of player, right? So with that said, like as soon as he drops that tweet, I think Schefter dropped it, and 31 fan bases are like, having Myles Garrett on my football team would be really cool. And we're not here to argue that because from a football standpoint, man, adding Myles Garrett to this defense without thinking of the other ramifications would be insane. You think about it would make life very, very easy, much easier, not very easy, much easier for your back end, right? For guys like Terry and Arnold, Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch, whoever's back there, but Amik, because those two are erasers, man. If you have them on, you have a Hutchinson and Myles Garrett duo, right? Like on like third down, and you're rushing four, and that's how you get it done, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Is being able to consistently generate quick pressure on a quarterback with four rushers, because then you can drop seven, and it's just a numbers game. Sometimes football is very simple when you boil it down to, in its, simplicity, but obviously we know it's not. But I say all that to say it would be incredible to have Myles Garrett with this defense, right, Miko? You'd have him, Aleem McNeil, Hutchinson, and then another interior rusher on third down, and you'd be cooking with some good oil.
I was going to say, like, that would a move like acquiring Myles Garrett takes you from like this being a weakness of the Detroit Lions to immediately like this being one of the best, if not top 5 best defensive lines in football, just by adding Myles Garrett to Aiden Hutchinson, Aleem McNeil, like you said, DJ Reader on those early down situations. And like you said, it almost becomes like a pick 'em. Like, it doesn't matter who you throw in there to be that other pass rusher.
They're going to
on third down.
Yep.
Hell, throw Josh Pascal in the middle, right? Like, things start to become like very, very interesting. And that's not even including, again, how creative you can get with blitz concepts, because Aiden's already a handful by himself. Even, and again, we're projecting how he's going to be coming off of his broken leg and things of that nature. I still expect him to be able to pick up where he left off. But you have a guy that's already going to command double teams on one side. You have another dude that demands triple teams. So it would make life, yes, easy if you're a defensive coordinator, for especially a first-time defensive coordinator in Kelvin Shepard, where you'd look at your two DNs and you're just like, go. Just do what you do best, right?
Beat the brakes off tackles.
Right. And so, like, again, like you said, for 31 teams across the league, the desire to have Myles Garrett is going to be through the roof, even if you have a great pass rusher. You think the Steelers aren't going to call about Myles Garrett just because they have TJ Watt? Like, no, they're still going to call. But the question becomes, Morgan, immediately is the cost. And I think the thing that we always have to caution fans on is like you hear a name, and the minute you hear the name is available, like it's almost like giving your kid a credit card. That credit card has a limit, but all they heard was go buy stuff, and they're just going to rack it up. And like I think NFL fans do that the same thing with like salary caps, or they're just like how their team is constructed. Is like, no, this player is available. I don't care what it costs, go get him. But there is a cost that comes to having a Myles Garrett, right?
Yeah, and this is where, excuse me, this is why we set the table the way we did, right? Because at the end of the day, like, yes, we cover football for Pride of Detroit and we're fans of the Lions, but at the end of the day, we're fans, right? So, yeah, obviously adding, in my opinion, the best edge rusher in football to a top 5, top 3, depending on who you ask, edge rusher in football, and ascending, had he had that. I think if he'd ran 2024 like he was on pace to before the injury, we'd probably be talking 1 and 2, to be honest, Garrett and Hutchinson. That's
Hutch was
how
on a
great.
defensive player of the year type of run.
Yeah. 3 down player, the whole thing, man. And then Aleem, in my opinion, is a top 10 interior rusher, interior player in football. You'd be cooking, man. It would be good. You got the linebackers, a lot of them coming back. You have the decisions, a couple decisions on a few, but yeah, but from a cost standpoint, the salary cap is real, folks. I know there's people out there that are like, salary cap's not real. Ask the Saints if the salary cap is real. They kicked the can for a long time to keep that window open, that proverbial window, right? And now you're paying the piper, because what you're doing is, so say what we talk about, Miko, the trade would be at least 2 ones and probably a day 2 pick for Myles Garrett. At the
Minimum
minimum.
one. At a
Yeah.
minimum, 1 day 2 pick. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. So yeah, you're looking at 3 premium picks, 2 premium picks, and a day 2 pick, right? To acquire somebody. And he does have 2 years on his deal, okay? But he's made it pretty clear he wants, like, whoever trades for him is going to need to pay him again, right? Because he's still relatively young. He's got several years left in his prime, in my opinion. So he'll want a new contract, and it's going to be like Al Carson on staff pointed it out. He'll want a contract paying him $35 million, north of $35 million. So you combine that with the fact, I know most of y'all want this. I do think they're going to extend Hutchinson, and they're going to do it probably, if we're looking, reading the tea leaves and how they've done it before, do it how they did Sewell, right? So they're going to standard first round contract. You have 4 years with a 5th year team option, right? So for Sewell, they just extended him 4 years, but they just tacked it on to the end of the rookie deal. So really, it's like a 6-year extension. Like, you're going to be a Lion for a long time. And I expect them to do that with Hutchinson. So in doing so, yes, they can keep that cap hit down for a little bit, right? And, keep it, if they could make it work, if we're just talking like raw numbers. But I do think you risk kicking that can, Miko, because like right now, Sewell's cap number is not super high in 2025. Neither is St. Brown's, but they do get higher when you backload these deals, and you can work things around. There's ways around it. But at the same time, I think if you do this with Myles Garrett, now you're going to places you're like, can you afford to extend, Kirby, BB, we talked about, Jameson, Jameer, right?
Yeah.
2,000-yard all-purpose back. So these are the thought processes we have before we're like, yeah, because obviously you want Myles Garrett on your team, right, Miko? But with all that considered, like, what do you think?
No, I think like I'm right in the same boat as you, because I think that part of it is always the thing that comes to mind for me first and foremost. Like, I see the player and I'm like, oh, that would be really interesting, but I know the cost. Like, I know no one's giving away Myles Garrett for free. No one's getting a Dallas Mavericks deal on Myles Garrett, right? Like, you're not getting a Luka Doncic type of deal, because that's a player that's not only beloved by the Browns, but like the Browns are already sitting there like, hey, we're trying to fight like hell to not go back to, obscurity. And giving away Myles Garrett would be like essentially doing that. So you're going to have to give up a lot in terms of just acquisition. So like you said, whether it's like, if you're of the opinion that the picks don't matter, right? Like, there's a lot of people out there that want the Lions to go full less need and just be like, yo, F them picks. If you're of that mentality, I don't blame you, but understand that like you're not talking about 1 or 2, like you're talking about potentially this leading into like 3 years of not having the picks that you want. And even if it is if you're of the mindset like, oh, but you're talking about a late first round pick, you're hoping it's a late first round pick. I think what this past season should have taught a lot of Lions fans is how quickly things can go from bad to worse when you start talking injuries. And yes, the Lions still finished 15, but think about how lucky you got that a lot of those injuries were on the defensive side of the football. You didn't lose Penei Sewell or Taylor Decker. You for damn sure didn't lose Jared Goff. And those types of losses, I think, shift your record. And so I look back at the Chicago Bears, Morgan, back when they traded with the Panthers so that the Panthers should get the first round pick to get the first overall pick to pick Bryce Young. They're giving up that first round pick, the Panthers were, because they're like, we're going to get Bryce Young. We'll be solid. We can afford not to have this first round pick. And then they sucked.
Yep.
Right? Like
Yep.
they ended up getting the first overall pick again, but you don't own it. The Bears own it now. So
Yeah.
even though the Bears were bad on their own, the Bears now have 2 top 10 picks. And so whenever I'm thinking about the Lions doing a move like this, I don't immediately run to the thought process of, well, it's just too late for first round picks. No, I look at it in the realm of you're talking about at best a late round pick, but at worst a middle of the first round pick. Because I still think that even if the Lions lost Jared Goff for a season, you're still probably winning 7-8 games just with the rest of the talent that's on that roster. And for me, that price becomes too high, even for a Myles Garrett, specifically a Myles Garrett that's 30 years old, right?
100%, man. I like that's exactly where my brain goes, guys. And like what Miko's saying rings true, right? You think about it is yes, if like say even if the picks are late, right? Like the Lions pick in the like hopefully 32 at one point,
Mm-hmm.
27, that kind of thing. That's the way Brad Holmes, who we've seen is one of if not the best in the business at doing this, right? That's his superpower, right? Like replenishing the roster with cost controlled contracts. Like this is how the Lions have gotten really good in a relatively short manner, right? You got like these guys come in and contribute right away, which is another conversation we have to have about draft class expectations because I've seen people like, well, the last year's draft class didn't really contribute much outside of Terrion. Well, yes, but the roster is kind of at that point, y'all. You know what I mean? Like there's not a
You
whole lot
didn't
of
need it.
places. Yeah, there's not a lot of places for a Jameer Gibbs and a Sam Laporta and a Brian Branch to start day one and start cooking. You know what I mean? Those days are kind of over. But to my point with taking away draft picks, that's the tough part because as your superstars start to get more expensive with these backloaded contracts, and like I said, you can work things around, right? But we talked about the 2025 cap hits. So your highest hits are Jared Goff at 32.6, Taylor Decker at 23, Ragnow at 14, and Amon Ra at 13, right? But in 2026, your stars start, getting paid a little more in terms of their overall cap number. Little over 33 million in 2026 for Amon Ra, 28 million for Penei Sewell, another, 28.9, almost, so almost 29 million for Aleem, right? So that's where you gotta pick and choose, and you have to be able to replenish that roster with some cost controlled talent. Because as you get to be a team, like look at the Niners, right? They got a lot of dudes paid because they drafted well and developed well for a really long time. But things get pricey, and that's kind of where my brain goes as just like a cap nerd. And if you guys want to look into this more, I suggest always using Over the Cap. In my opinion, that's the best database, and like if you're looking for accurate numbers and everything like that. So yeah, that's where my brain goes, Miko. I'm right there with you. On a football standpoint, would I love to add Myles Garrett? 100,000%. But we've heard from Brad Holmes and Campbell, Brad Holmes a lot. They're not in this for, like you said, like going hard for like 1 or 2 years and then maybe falling back. They want to be having a bite at the apple every year. In my opinion, with as competitive as this league is, that's the best way to win a couple championships over the course of, a decade. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this team is very much focused on keeping that playoff window, that Super Bowl window open as long as possible, not necessarily trying to capitalize on it in one magical season. Again, not saying that that's what you would be doing with Myles Garrett, but whether it's trading away a ton of draft assets, whether it's giving up a lot of cap space, Morgan, they may even have to give up actual talent to acquire a Myles Garrett. Like if you're if you're Brad Holmes and you're trying to, again, try to maybe keep the draft capital down, okay, well now you're going to have to look at who some of your best players are, and it's like, okay, well who does the Cleveland Browns want that's valuable to them that's on your roster? And I'm sorry that some of the young, really good talent that's on this roster right now, I'm not looking to give up anybody right now, right? Like no one, you're definitely not giving up Hutch. You're not giving up Jameer. You're not giving up Jamo, Amon Ra, Kirby or Brian Branch. Like the Lions youth is one of the most valuable assets they have. And so, yes, while some of these players will become more expensive down the road, they're not there yet. And again, none of them are necessarily expendable. Some people might argue like about JMO, like, oh, maybe you could swing JMO, but I don't think JMO's going to swing the needle a ton to a team that doesn't have a quarterback.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. That's a great point. Yeah, and look, that's kind of, we're on some Madden stuff. If they're like, could they inquire about some of the Lions' young talent for sure? But like, I don't know. It's just a weird situation. This doesn't happen a lot in the NFL. Like this NBA stuff that happened that just rattled the core of the league the other day. Like,
yeah,
and to the people that are going to argue in the comments, like, oh, we need to do this, like to make it, I will say Garrett coming so like forth and just coming out here and saying it, like I do think that affects leverage a little bit. Like, I don't know, maybe, but Cleveland's still going to get a haul, in my opinion.
I mean, yeah, right now Cleveland controls everything because they don't have to trade him. Like you said, he's under contract, so they can hold on to him as long as they want to until they get a deal that they want, which again, I don't think is going to take very long because it's Myles freaking Garrett.
Yeah.
Somebody in this league is going to say F them picks and give it up. Whether that's the Lions or not, we will have to wait and see. But like you and I seem to agree on this point, I'm not confident that it's going to be the Lions. Whether that's the right move or the wrong move, only time will tell that, Morgan, right? Like there's no way of saying right now what the Lions absolutely need to do. What I will say that the Lions absolutely need to do that kind of goes like side by side with Myles Garrett is that they're going to have to be aggressive in the offseason on addressing this defense. It doesn't have to be Myles Garrett, but yeah, you need to go out there and you need to go find some more edge, rushing help for Aiden Hutchinson. You need to shore up your interior defensive line so that there's like, some quality depth there. The Lions can still very much improve their defense from looking at their front four to looking at their secondary without having to like expend the resources that it would take to get a Myles Garrett. And you may be able to get the same type of impact, maybe not in one player, but over the course of adding quality talent. We saw them do that with them simply just adding Amik Robertson and adding Carlton Davis this season. Like your secondary went up immensely off of two signings and a draft pick that played all season. And again, I know people are, up and down on TA's performance, but he was still healthy and he still went out there and started every game for you.
Yeah, and Terrion got better as the year went on. I'm very encouraged by Terrion Arnold, in my opinion. Again, like with a healthy front, his life will get easier. So, and the Meeks and everybody else back there. Yeah, but I'm right there with you, man. Like at the end of the day, like I could really see Brad Holmes like doing what he just, because he attacks things like and he just throws a bunch of stuff at it, right? And in my opinion, it wouldn't shock me at all if come April the Lions do a little double dip in the trenches on either side of the ball. Like re-sign Derek Barnes. In my opinion, that's going to be something that I'm working on a free agent profile right now. I think it's not going to cost a lot. It would solidify that Sam position opposite of Hutchinson when you want to go, in those 5-man fronts and mix things up, whatever you're doing, and gives you depth at the, off ball spots. And if you draft, use a couple, day 1, day 2 picks on, from on D line, like a 3 tech and maybe a big end, I think you're cooking. I think because you're getting deeper, you get a lean back, you get Hutch back. Maybe you bring in like a veteran signing. You still have DJ Reader, but that's how I'm looking at this, Miko. I think they could do like a little quadruple dip in the trenches, in those first 3 rounds, in my opinion, because you're going to get the comp pick. And
Yeah,
I think that's how you solidify this thing and keep things going, because you need to get cheaper in some of those spots because you got some studs, cost to
I'm
be
right there
good.
with you. And I think listen, the Myles Garrett news is exciting and it's going to be interesting. And let's just let the audience know right now. You're going to see the Lions name floated out there. You're going to see reports about the Lions inquiring about Myles Garrett. Any good GM would be doing this. And a team like the Lions that have a need should inquire, and they should see what it's worth, and they should talk about it internally and weigh what that decision looks like. But at the same time, guys, we're going to say it now before the news breaks that he's been traded. If he doesn't land in Detroit, we all have to be able to take a step back and realize that the Lions didn't waste an opportunity to improve this roster, that they still have, like Morgan just said, between the draft, veteran, like other veteran free agents that are going to be available, and other possible trades they could explore to address this roster and improve it on the defensive side. This is not a one and done type of opportunity for the Lions this early. Hell, it's not even officially the offseason yet. It's the offseason for us, but the Super Bowl is still Sunday, guys.
That's true. That's true too, bro. Yeah, I be ecstatic if that happened, guys. 100%. Because Myles Garrett on the team would be good. I would trust Brad and Mike Disner and those guys to figure it out on the cap side of things. I'd be a little nervous there. I'm not gonna lie, but I think everyone will be happy here, and soon when we get the news that Hutchinson's getting the extension, and then Kirby's going to hopefully get his extension. And then off you go, man. I think you just, you make their little splashes here and there in free agency. I don't ever think this team's going to be a wheeling and dealing kind of trade, big splash in free agency team, just because the draft is what's going to be all about, because they want to be good all the time. We keep saying that, but it's true, because they want to be good every year, not just for like a span of like 6 years and then fade into obscurity. You know what I mean? So
there's a specific topic in that same realm that I would love to get into. We won't get into it today, but there's something very similar to what you're saying about, like, I don't think the Lions will ever be that, hey, let's swing for the fences type team. But there is an approach that I would love to see them take that another team in the NFL has been taking. And I don't know if the Lions will ever do it, but I see what they've done, and I'm like, I would like the Lions to be a little more like them. But I also save the right to, like, if the Lions do trade for Myles Garrett, I'm going to get on this channel and I'm going to say some outlandish things about going to the Super Bowl. Like, let's just throw it out there right now. I'm going to say some outlandish things.
I mean, do it instantly. Like we said at the top, man, like you add him, especially you're just looking strictly at 2025. There's going to be some NFC teams that are going to be like, yo, what?
Yeah. Like, how do we deal with that?
Yeah. And then they're going to score like they've been scoring. Ooh, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, you're going to be, some NFC teams are going to get a little tight. You know what I'm saying? So it'd be fun. At the end of the day, though, I think the Lions can still make their, have their fun here in the offseason when people get re-signed. And I'm excited for the draft because they're deep. We're just getting into our draft prep.
Mm-hmm.
It took a little bit, guys. Like, after that loss, I was on football for a little bit. So,
but the mock drafts are starting to flow. I think we got there just at the right time. You're starting to see the mock drafts come in there. We're starting to become familiar with a couple names. We're going to start doing some of that stuff over here on the channel. So, with that said, make sure that you guys are subscribed to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. Make sure that you've hit that notification bell, because that's going to help you out a ton, whether it's the live streams that are happening over on the channel, or whether it's Morgan and I uploading new videos. You have to be subscribed, or you want to be subscribed, if you want to get those notifications as soon as those videos become available. If you're looking for any more additional Lions news or anything regarding coaching or player, signings or rumors, prideofdetroit.com is your go-to place for all of those things as well. So with all of that said, I'm Miko. He's Morgan. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.